Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and surprise surprise we're going to be talking about this. And it's actually fairly important because this could affect the future of Total War in general. So Pharaoh released last Wednesday to not great numbers, let's be honest, and it's been dwindling ever since. The highest peak was on release day, which was 5,424, and yeah, I was expecting it to rise, I'll be very honest. I think a few of us were. Even Legend was expecting Pharaoh to at least do a little bit better on the weekend than it did on the release. Keep in mind that the core player numbers are on Steam for Pharaoh as there was no Epic Game Store release. Yeah, with the weekend going to around 4,000 a bit, sometimes getting kind of close to 5k, but nothing too much. Yesterday, the first day of a new week, yeah, its peak was about 3,400, which is not good, and it looks like it's having an even bigger drop today. Keep in mind that obviously this isn't peak times. It's actually fairly interesting considering that the follower basis on Steam is actually growing, and that's likely that people are interested in the game, they're just not willing to pay the price of a full title for what is effectively a saga. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, this is essentially a saga title because it is relatively small for a Total War game. Now I know some people might be celebrating this, but let's be honest here, it's nothing to celebrate. Obviously a very passionate team has put a lot of work into this, but yeah, it just didn't resonate with the fan base for a number of reasons. One, the community's still pissed off. Yeah, it's very, very obvious. Patch 3.1 was awful, Shadows of Change was downright abysmal, and then obviously we had that funny statement by Rob Bartholomew which just added more gasoline to the fire. All that with Creative Assembly just hiding away as per usual, that's going to leave a mark throughout the community. Even the historical fans that have no interest in Warhammer would have been looking at this situation closely and going, well, if it's happened to their cash cow, they're obviously going to do it with other titles. The fact that Creative Assembly have still yet to make a response to all the stupidity, because that's literally what it is kind of worrying, right? Which is one of Creative Assembly's biggest flaws. They make a mistake, they basically shoot the family dog, and then they decide to go away for a pack of cigarettes. Only coming back to properly communicate when, you know, maybe everyone's forgotten, maybe the fire's already burnt out. Other companies do this, don't get me wrong, but Creative Assembly are the worst ones here. Everyone was keeping an eye on Pharaoh for this specific reason, or less of an eye on Pharaoh, better yet said. Unfortunately, the setting is also not that interesting. Yeah, I know, Egypt is a big thing, a lot of people do get into it, but you're going into a timeline where Creative Assembly have even gone to say, look, we just don't know enough about it, right? A lot of the Bronze Age collapse is naturally unrecorded. Well, why are we going to go into a setting where we don't know enough? The majority of the fan base did want, like, say, Medieval 3 or Empire 2, and I'm one of those people, but yeah, another title would have been perfectly fine. Creative Assembly have done other things before, like Attila, obviously Shogun was a big one too, Rome. I don't mind them going to different locations, but I want to know more context. They worked with historians on the game, apparently. You can see that on Twitter and stuff. Why didn't they use those historians to make videos, right? Provide some context, some actual history about those areas, so that way people would get more engaged. Instead, what they did is they sent an unfunny comedian to Egypt, and the guy said like holiday like 9 times in the first video. I get it, yeah, it worked really well when they did it with Rome Remastered, but when there's a little bit of controversy, and you know that controversy is going to be kicking up, maybe find the reason to engage the fan base more. And before you say, well, this was likely done way before the whole Shadows of Change issue and so on, this is still part of their roadmap. Internally, they must have been looking at, hey, we're putting a Lord Pack to 25 euros. It's going to be a shit show. We should really be worried about our other titles too. But marketing has never been the strong suit for Creative Assembly. Yeah, I know, it sounds odd for a basically AAA company not to have decent marketing, it's just always been the case. There's been issues with streams and so on, where they've shown pretty much what would be considered a red flag in Total War gaming, like for example, killing off a general and saying that doesn't matter too much. Its lack of marketing from YouTubers, streamers, and so on did obviously affect this, because surprise, surprise, any content creator that gets an early access key is free marketing, right? I am too. It's very obvious and I don't deny it. The problem is that a bunch of creators, myself included, were also justifiably burnt out because of the whole Shadows of Change issue, and not only that, yeah, I kind of lost interest the moment that I found out the price. If you actually go through my channel, there were some cases that I was actually covering Pharaoh during the early access periods. I took part in the battle review, I took part in a few news posts, which I was like, yeah, you know, this is quite interesting. While they had killed off the Saga title for Total War games, I honestly still thought that this was going to be priced like a Saga, because it's clearly smaller. Yes, the map is bigger, but it's, yeah, smaller. Let's be honest there, right? It is completely small. I saw a lot of people blaming the creators, the usual Total War creators, for not covering the game. And yeah, it was kind of funny when it was mentioned by members of Creative Assembly staff. But let me tell you something very important about how YouTubing works and so on. If we know that this is going to be a dead title, creators aren't going to cover it because it's not worth harming your own channel. We don't get paid by Creative Assembly. We get early access keys, like I get early access keys from other companies. Doesn't mean that I have to cover it, because it does actually hurt your channel if you decide to cover a dead game. That whole stuff about the algorithm is true, and if you're running your channel like a business, if this is your main source or one of your primary sources of income, you're not going to actively screw it over because, oh yes, there's a game coming out which is attached to the series that I play. It's also why you've seen more negative videos being posted on Total War Pharaoh than you've seen positive, because negativity actually does sell. Or why creators are just voicing their frustrations. It's not even just the negativity selling's point, it's more of the case of they're tired. It's been too many issues happening with Total War for the past 3 years, and it just doesn't seem to let up. Admittedly, the past 2 minutes is for the sake of Creative Assembly staff that might be watching this video, because they don't seem to understand how YouTube works despite hiring former YouTubers. If they want to put their own business at risk, yeah, you know, do it. I mean, it's stupid, but, you know, YOLO. But a creator is not going to risk their potential career or their current career for someone else's silly mistakes. So, context aside, here we are with a game that is just not performing as expected. Where does that leave us? Well, I imagine that Total War Pharaoh will still get some DLCs. They kind of legally have to. As you imagine, there was a roadmap there with, what, 4 DLCs if you purchase the Dynasty Edition? And the fact is, they need to do it. Not only because they need to honor financial agreements, because a purchase is a financial agreement, but also if they decide to kill it off early, yeah, they're going to be made to look like a joke. That's what happens when you announce content plans even without giving any context and you start selling a game for €100. Not worth the price, by the way, and it's something that, yeah, you know, you can pick up for much cheaper. You can actually get the Dynasty Edition online through other websites for like €60, which is possibly more worth it if you're interested in the Bronze Age stuff. Hell, you can actually pick up the base game for like €35, which is actually the price more or less what it should be, and people aren't picking it up. It's not that difficult to search for it online from these key websites, but yeah, it's very obvious that everyone's burnt out. They're still going to have to do DLCs. Hell, it's likely that they've got DLCs ready, considering that there was already a cutout for a legendary character already found in the game files. There's commits for other DLCs found in the game files, and literally all of Troy is in the game files. Not just like basic stuff, I mean literally the whole rosters, all the legendary characters, everything. So clearly the plans are there, and they're going to try and do as much as they can with it before eventually moving on to another title. This is what's happened before with, say, for example, Thrones of Britannia and a few other games. Troy, there was very obviously going to be some other DLC for Troy, which may or may not have become Total War Pharaoh. Some people say that it isn't. But there's other things to make people think otherwise. Hey, you know, people are entitled to their own opinions. Now, obviously, we do have to talk about a few things. There's some people getting a little bit concerned that CA Sophia might get cut and so on. The problem is, and the unfortunate reality of it is, people have been on the firing line and the potential of being fired ever since the Hyenas debacle happened. Yes, I know some people are sick about hearing of Hyenas, but the moment that that happened, the same thing what happened with Relic. They announced some cuts and it ended up being much larger than people expected. I honestly do not think that CA Sophia should be blamed for the, well, failures of Pharaoh, because they wouldn't be the one deciding what games they're working on. This is obviously, again, a management issue, so maybe and hopefully they don't get hit as badly, because yeah, they're a good studio. I know a lot of you guys haven't been interested in Pharaoh and interested in Troy, but let's be honest, DLC that they've done has always been very, very good. It's been innovative, so they've actually been able to create new stuff and stuff that we've been wanting, bleeding over, not just to Warhammer 3, but future historical games. They were pretty much the reason why Rowan 2 was pretty much saved. They have actually proven time and time again that they're a good team, and they should be nurtured as if they were a main team. Not dealing with recycling assets, just literally making something big. That being said, there's still a chance that they could make Pharaoh work. Yes, the numbers don't look great, but keep in mind that a lot of Total War games suffer. It's actually kind of disappointing when you compare it to Paradox games where they've got a constant trend upwards, talking about stuff like Hearts of Iron 4 and other games, whereas Total War usually has a big launch and then it goes down. However, there have been cases that things have gotten better. Total War Warhammer 2 is the perfect example where the player base dramatically rose after the Potion of Speed update. I guess time will tell. It's one of these things where now it's going to be a gamble, especially with Sega looking down at them and just itching to cut some studios. I still very much believe that this is going to that theory of someone in CA is intentionally tanking stuff so the value drops and Microsoft ends up buying Sega. It's a very faint rumor, but the more that this happens, the more that it's believable, right? When it comes to the Total War Warhammer scene, CA are probably in a panic mode right now. They're not earning as much cash as they would have wanted, and now it's the case that they might have to sit down and start thinking about more content for Total War Warhammer. This is their only title. There's going to be more. I actually imagine that we might hear something about the next big historical next year, as they're going to be trying to get as many Total War games out as possible, but we don't actually know exactly what titles have actually been shot by Sega, as we know that's a thing now. But on the current basis, yeah, you know, we've got 3 DLCs a year for Warhammer 3. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing 4 DLCs a year. Instead of 1 every 4 months, we might start to see 1 every 3 months. They might start to panic, and that is what worries me too. Obviously, Shadows of Change hasn't been a good thing, and it does concern me that DLC coming out faster could end up being worse for the game. There's been a lot of problems lately, and I just don't want this to repeat themselves. Last thing we need is Rob showing up and threatening the game once again, right? That will literally be the end of Total War. I'm not trying to be a doomer here. I have some genuine concern because I have a lot of stake in this title, and I'm worried about Total War Warhammer. I will be very honest with you at this point, I don't really care about Pharaoh, as there have been a lot of reasons for me to just flat out lose interest. But Warhammer 3 has been an uphill battle. This is the 3rd drought that we're jumping into, or better yet said, 3rd controversy, and it's not been great. It is literally not been great. It's killing off interest for a lot of creators, which is very obvious through the interview series, and more interviews that I've still got coming out. Hell, the next one is actually kind of shocking. But hopefully Creative Assembly can bounce back. They've been able to bounce back from controversies before. I don't know what's going on now. It could be that the fact is, you know, if you hire someone from EA, which is what happened about 3 years ago, this is where problems started coming up. Maybe you need to start thinking about who actually needs to be running the company. But with all that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I do apologize if this sounded a little bit doomery. There's a bunch of really fun content that I've got planned as from tomorrow, which is very, very different, and I'm really excited about. So hopefully you guys enjoy that too. Have a good day, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon.